I saw the wedding photos on social media the day my brother got married. In the pictures, Ryan stood in the middle of the hotel ballroom in a black suit, holding Claire's hand. They looked so happy. And I hadn't been invited. Not even a text message. No explanation. That morning at 10, I was sitting in my company's conference room when my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. Linda. Just 4 words. Don't go to the wedding. I stared at them for a long time. Then I replied. Why? A few minutes later, she called. I picked up. And before I could speak, I heard her tired voice. Olivia. Don't make this ugly. I held the phone and asked. Make what ugly? A pause on the other end. Then she said. Claire doesn't want you there. I laughed. Not because I found it funny, but because, in that moment, I didn't know how else to respond. So my own brother gets married. And I can't go. My mother sighed. It's not that you can't go. It's that there's no point. Your brother needs a fresh start. All their friends and business partners will be there. Claire thinks your presence would be awkward. I looked out at the city through the window. That office building was some thing I had built over 8 years. My company, my team, my name. But in my family's eyes, I was still just the little sister who followed her brother around. My presence would be awkward. I asked softly. My mother didn't answer. She only said, Olivia. You have everything now. Why can't you be a little more understanding of other people? I had heard that sentence for years. When my first business failed. When I refused to cover Ryan's investment losses. When they thought I should credit all my success to the family. They always told me I was lucky. So I should give. But they forgot me so-called luck was me rewriting proposals at 3 in the morning. It was me reorganizing my files after 27 rejections from investors. It was me believing in myself when no one else did. I hung up. I didn't go to the wedding. That day. I didn't cry. I didn't text Ryan to demand an explanation. Because I knew when someone decides to discard you, any explanation only makes you look more pathetic. But I never expected that excluding me from the wedding was only the first step of their plan. 3 years ago. When I first started my company, Ryan was the first to call and congratulate me. He said, Olivia, I knew you'd make it. Back then, I believed him. I even thought that despite our differences, we were still family. So when he first asked to borrow money, I didn't hesitate. He said his real estate project needed a 3-month turnaround. I transferred the money. No, I owe you. Because he said, we're siblings. Later I learned some people are best at weaponizing your trust in blood. The first time Ryan disappointed me was when I found out he never put that money into the project. I traced the funds and discovered they'd been used to buy a luxury car. I went to see him. He sat in his new car and, when he saw me, showed not a shred of guilt. He said, Olivia, you make so much money now. Why be so petty? I asked. That was my money. He laughed. When did you become so cold? In that moment, I realized for the first time. In his eyes. My kindness wasn't affection. It was an infinite resource. Later, Claire joined the game. She started hinting at family gatherings that I had become too rich to care about my relatives. She would hold her coffee, smile, and say, Olivia is such a big boss now. We ordinary people really can't understand her. Every time. She made it sound like a compliment. But every sentence reminded everyone else that I was the outsider. I tolerated it. Because I told myself that's my brother. That's my parents. But on the wedding day, when I couldn't even have a seat as a spectator, I finally understood. Some relationships aren't worth keeping, no matter how hard you try. At 8 that night, I received a message from Ryan. He said, Olivia, I hope you understand Claire. The wedding is important. We didn't want any complicated issues to affect the mood. I looked at those words for a long time. Then I replied. Don't worry. It won't happen again. He didn't understand what I meant. Not until later did he realize that wasn't a sulky remark. It was the beginning of my decision to stop enabling everyone. Because on the very day of his wedding, I had discovered a contract hidden in my company's files. A contract that should never have existed. And on the signature line me name. That contract was the proof of Ryan's real betrayal. I remember clearly. The morning after the wedding. I went back to the office. All my employees thought I was just handling routine work. No one knew that just hours earlier, my own brother had been posting wedding photos on social media. Hundreds of congratulations underneath. Everyone said, "Ryan is so lucky to have such a successful sister." Only I knew that the successful sister had almost become the tool they used to drain my company. The person who found the contract was my finance director, Mason. He walked into my office with the file, his face grim. "Olivia, did you sign this authorization agreement?" I took the file. The first thing I saw was my name. The second thing I saw was the date 3 months ago. At that time, I had been abroad at a funding conference. I hadn't even been in the country. I flipped to the last page. There was an electronic signature. It looked exactly like mine. But I knew it wasn't. Because my signature had a habit my father taught me when I was young. The last letter. I always pull down an extra stroke. This signature didn't have that stroke. I put the contract on the desk and asked Mason, "Where was this found?" He said, "In the company archive system. Uploaded using your administrator credentials." I tapped my finger lightly on the desk. Administrator credentials. Only 3 people had them. Me, Mason, and Ryan. In that moment, all the overlooked details came rushing back. Late last year, Ryan had asked me, "Olivia, is your contract approval process complicated?" I had even laughed and told him, "If you want to learn management, you can come take a look." I had even shown him some company documents. Because I trusted him. Now I realized that wasn't concern. That was reconnaissance. Mason continued, "There's something else." He opened his laptop. Over the last 6 months, several supplier contracts were modified. On the screen were internal records. Payment accounts for several vendors had been changed to an unfamiliar account. The amounts weren't huge, a few tens of thousands each time. But cumulatively, they exceeded $500,000. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. This wasn't a mistake. This was a plan. Someone was slowly siphoning money from my company. And that person knew my business intimately. That night, I went to Ryan's new home. Not to argue. Not to confront. I just wanted to see with my own eyes whether he would still admit it. Claire opened the door. She was wearing new loungewear from after the wedding. When she saw me, her smile vanished. "Olivia." She glanced at the time. "It's late. What's wrong?" I held up the file. "I need to ask Ryan a few questions." A few seconds later, Ryan came out from the living room. He saw the file. And his expression shifted, but he recovered quickly. "You're checking company files." I looked at him. "It's my company." He laughed. "We're family." That phrase again. I'd heard enough. "So family forgery is okay." The living room went quiet. Claire frowned. "Olivia, don't be so harsh." I turned to her. "Harsh? Someone used my identity to sign a $3 million authorization. I'm just stating facts." Ryan sat down. "No apology. No explanation." He said, "You're being too sensitive now, aren't you? The company is growing fast. Sometimes we need to be flexible." I asked, "Who gave you the right to represent me?" He paused, then said, "I'm your brother." I laughed. For the first time. That phrase sounded utterly ridiculous. "Ryan. You know what? I used to hear those words and feel safe. Now I hear them and I know someone's about to take something from me." Claire stood nearby and said softly, "Olivia. You've really changed. You weren't like this before." I looked at her. "The old me trusted you. The current me trusts only evidence." As I left, Ryan followed me to the door. He said, "Olivia, if you blow this up, no one benefits." I stopped. Didn't turn around. "Ryan, you're wrong. I'm not blowing anything up. You're the ones who finally exposed what you've been hiding." That night, I called Victoria Brooks, a commercial attorney I had known for years. The next morning, she sat in my office, reviewed everything, and asked me one question. "Olivia, are you sure you want to go the legal route?" I looked out the window and answered calmly, "Yes. They didn't just take money. They forged my identity. Victoria closed the file. She told me. If the electronic signature was unauthorized, that could be contract fraud. If someone forged commercial authorization documents, that could involve forgery and fraud. If funds were illegally transferred, that could be misappropriation of business assets. I nodded. No hesitation. Because I finally understood. Some people don't hurt you because you're too strong. They hurt you because they were sure you'd never fight back. But they didn't know silent people have limits. 2. The day I began gathering evidence. Ryan was still posting wedding photos on social media. He didn't know that the most important celebration of his life had also become the countdown to his fall. I used to think the worst pain was being hurt by family. Later I realized what truly chills you is when you present the evidence. And they still insist they did nothing wrong. 3 days into Victoria's investigation, I got a call from my father, Michael. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask about the company. His first words were, "Olivia, why did you hire a lawyer?" I sat in my office, looking at the papers. "Ryan told you." My father paused, then said, "Your brother says you've misunderstood him." I closed my eyes. Of course, Ryan hadn't explained the contract or the money. He had chosen to control the family narrative first. "Dad, I haven't misunderstood. I have evidence." A sigh came through the phone. "Olivia, you've always been smart, but sometimes you trust your own judgment too much." I said nothing, because I knew what came next. I'd heard it many times. "Ryan is your brother. He just wanted to help with a few things. Your company is so big now, why not share some opportunities with family?" I looked down at the file and asked softly, "So using my identity without permission is also helping?" My father didn't answer. After a few seconds, he said, "It's not as serious as you think." In that moment, I remembered my childhood, when Ryan broke a neighbor's window. My father asked me first, "Why weren't you watching your brother?" When Ryan cheated on a test, my mother told me, "Don't expose him. It'll hurt his pride." When Ryan failed at work, they told me, "You have the ability. You should help him." I always thought my parents just favored my brother more. Only now did I understand they weren't blind to Ryan's wrongs. They just believed that as long as I was the one sacrificed, the family could stay peaceful. "Dad," I said quietly, "if it were me who signed a fake contract today, would you still say the same?" Silence on the line. I continued, "If I took money from Ryan's company, would you tell him to understand family?" He didn't answer, but his silence already gave me my answer. Less than an hour later, my mother called. She was crying. "Olivia, how could you do this to your brother?" "What did I do?" I asked. "You got lawyers to investigate him. You're making the family a laughingstock." Her voice rose. "He just got married. Can't you let him have peace?" I held the phone. Suddenly exhausted. Not angry, just tired. "Mom, he didn't invite me to his wedding." A pause. Then she said, "That was Claire's decision. Why can't you be more magnanimous?" I laughed. "So the wedding, that's her decision. Forging documents, that's his decision. And I'm still the one who has to bear the pain." My mother didn't answer. She only said, "You've become a stranger." I looked out the window and answered softly, "I haven't changed. I just used to let you treat me this way." This time, I didn't wait for them to understand, because I already knew they never would. They would only miss the old me when I was gone. And I was never going back. Victoria's investigation went deeper. She found that Ryan hadn't acted on impulse. 6 months earlier, he had started contacting my business partners. He attended commercial meetings as the family representative. He even hinted to outsiders that he would soon be involved in management. The most dangerous move, he tried to push the board to approve a new investment plan. Investment amount: $5 million. Project lead: Ryan Carter. Funding source: my company account. And in the project documents, one line read, "Olivia Carter has already authorized this." I had never seen that document. Victoria put the materials on the desk. He wasn't just trying to take money. He was trying to build a narrative that he was the real person in control. That sentence made me go quiet for a long time. Because I Ally understood what Ryan really wanted wasn't 3 million or 5 million. He wanted everything I had built over a decade. My name. My career. My worth. He wanted me to be the little sister standing behind him. Forever introduced as Ryan's sister. Not Olivia Carter. That night, I went home. James saw my face and didn't immediately ask what happened. He just poured me a glass of water. After a while, he said, "You finally decided to stop protecting them." I looked at him. "Did you already know they would never change?" James was silent. Then nodded. "I just wanted you to see it for yourself." I smiled bitterly. I used to think if I did well enough, they would finally acknowledge me. James took my hand. "Olivia, some people don't fail to see your value. They just know that acknowledging it would mean admitting they lost." That night, I signed the first formal legal authorization appointing Victoria to handle all commercial disputes. From that moment on, I was no longer the one cleaning up after my family. I was the victim, and the one seeking the truth. But just as Victoria was about to submit the filings, Ryan did something that made me decide no more chances. He called a family gathering. He invited every relative. And in front of everyone, he said, "Olivia has gotten rich. So now she thinks we're all a burden." Everyone looked at me, and Ryan stood in the center, looking wounded as if he were the real victim. In that moment, I knew he had chosen war. And I was ready to end it. The purpose of Ryan's family gathering, I later understood, wasn't to let me explain. It was to convict me in advance. That night, when I arrived at my parents' house, the living room was full. Uncles, aunts, several relatives who had watched us grow up. All eyes were on me the moment I walked in. Ryan sat in the middle of the sofa, his hand on Claire's shoulder. They looked like a couple who had just been wronged. And I looked like the troublemaker. My mother saw me and stood up immediately. "Olivia, good you're here." She came over and took my hand, but there was no care in her eyes. Only a warning. "Don't embarrass her. Tonight we're all family," she said softly. "Don't bring up those unpleasant things." I looked at her and gently pulled my hand back. "Mom, I don't know why I was asked here tonight." Ryan laughed a familiar laugh. "When we were kids." He made the same face after doing something wrong. First play innocent, then wait for someone to speak for him. "Olivia," he said, "I really didn't want things to go this far." One sentence, and he had placed himself in the victim's seat. Relatives began whispering. "How did siblings end up like this? Maybe it's a misunderstanding." Ryan lowered his head, his voice heavy. "I just wanted to help my sister manage some resources. I didn't think she'd see it as me hurting her." I looked at him. "Manage? Or forge authorizations?" The air went still. Ryan's expression froze for a second, then recovered. "See," he said, turning to everyone. "Now she won't even trust her own brother." Claire sighed softly. "Olivia, we know you're successful, but money really shouldn't change a person's character." In the past, that line would have stung because I used to fear being seen as cold. But now I only found it absurd. "Claire," I said, looking at her, "you know what you're best at. Making everyone think you're kind." She frowned. "What do you mean?" I said slowly, "truly kind people don't alter commercial documents behind your back." Ryan's face darkened. "Enough. What do you really want?" I looked at him. "I want to know why unauthorized fund transfers appeared in my company account." This time, no one spoke, because they knew this was no longer a family quarrel. It was a business matter. Ryan stood up, raising his voice. "Olivia, have you thought about what this will do to this family?" I looked back at him. "The person destroying the family isn't the one who found the problem. It's the one who created it." He stared at me for the first time, unable to use family guilt to overpower me. A few days later, Victoria formally filed the legal documents. She didn't escalate publicly, she moved step by step. First, freeze the disputed business accounts to prevent further loss. Second, demand that Ryan provide full sources of authorization including e-signature verification logs, file creation timestamps, login device information, and approval records. Third, apply for forensic authentication of the relevant contracts because if the signature and authorization were forged, The contracts themselves carried fraud risk. Victoria told me. Now the most important thing isn't getting them to admit anything, it's letting the evidence speak for you. I nodded. I remembered that. For the past decade, I had tried to make them understand my efforts. Now I didn't need understanding. I needed results. 2 weeks later, the investigation came back. The forged contract had been uploaded from Ryan's home computer, using his personal email to log in. More importantly, investigators found that Ryan had submitted that document to an investment institution trying to use my company as collateral to obtain new loans. This was no longer a family dispute. It was commercial fraud. When Victoria placed the report in front of me, she didn't say much, just told me. Now they can't explain this away as a misunderstanding. I looked at those few pages and suddenly remembered the wedding day. The invitation that never came. The moment I felt abandoned. The real betrayal wasn't that they excluded me from the wedding. It was that they had long ago decided I was a resource to be used, not a family member to be respected. Just as I was about to take the next step, Ryan called me. His tone, for the first time, had lost its arrogance. He said, "Olivia, can we talk?" I didn't answer immediately, because I knew when someone starts to be afraid, it's usually not because they finally regret it. It's because they realize they've lost control. If this had been 6 months ago, no, even a month ago, I might have softened. Because back then, I still believed that my brother might have just made a mistake. Maybe he was blinded by greed. Maybe he didn't realize how much he had hurt me. But now I saw clearly a person can regret a mistake. But when someone's first reaction after being caught isn't to apologize, but to cover up, that's not a mistake. That's a choice. So I didn't refuse to meet. But I didn't go to his home. I chose a coffee shop near the law firm, crowded enough, quiet enough. I didn't want an emotional brawl. Because in every fight before, I had lost, not because I was wrong, but because they always turned it into, "How can you treat your own family this way?" This time, I would not play by their rules. Ryan arrived looking much more haggard than before. No expensive suit. No Claire. He sat down and looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Olivia, do we really have to go this far?" I lifted my coffee and asked calmly, "How far?" He lowered his head. "Getting lawyers to investigate me. Letting everyone know our family's business." I looked at him. "Ryan, do you realize that even now, all you talk about is what you've lost? You haven't once asked what I've lost." His lips moved, but no words came. I continued. "I lost trust in my brother. What you lost was just a chance to keep using me." His expression shifted. "Is that really how you see me?" I smiled. "It's not how I see you, it's what your actions showed me." I took out a document and placed it on the table, the investigation report. "Who uploaded this contract?" Ryan didn't pick it up. He said, "I admit, I did help with some things, but I didn't have bad intentions." Hearing that, I felt a strange distance. How could anyone still evade the truth in the face of evidence? "No bad intentions?" I asked. "You used my identity, modified company documents, provided false authorizations to outside parties, and you tell me no bad intentions?" Ryan was silent. After a moment, he said, "I just wanted to prove myself." That sentence made me pause because it might have been the first truthful thing he'd said. I looked at him. "So proving yourself meant destroying me?" He said quietly. "Ever since we were kids, everyone said you were better. Mom and Dad always compared me to you. After your company succeeded, I felt like a failure." I listened without sympathy, only disappointment. Because I finally understood that Ryan wasn't unaware of how he hurt me. He just believed his own suffering mattered more. "Ryan," I said, "you know what the real difference is. When you surpassed me as a kid, I worked harder. When I surpassed you, you chose to pull me down." He looked up. His eyes conflicted. I stood. "This meeting isn't for reconciliation. It's to let you know everything that happens next is a result of your own choices." The next day, Victoria formally filed a civil suit in court. Simultaneously, based on the investigation, she submitted materials regarding suspected commercial fraud and forgery of commercial documents. She told me, "We'll first recover the financial losses. Then we'll seek to have the relevant contracts declared void. If the investigation confirms intentional forgery, it will enter criminal proceedings. I asked her, could they go to prison? Victoria looked at me. The outcome will be decided by the authorities. But no matter the result, they will face consequences. That was what I wanted, not emotional revenge. Not public shaming, but letting the rules handle them. In the past, they relied on family ties to protect themselves. Now they were facing the law. When word spread, Ryan's life began to unravel. His investment partners canceled collaborations. Banks suspended loan approvals. The friends who once surrounded him started deleting photos with him. Claire couldn't bear it. Most of all, she had always cared most about appearances. One night, she called me. For the first time, she dropped the pretense. Olivia, are you satisfied now? I sat in my office and asked, satisfied with what? Her voice trembled. Everyone now thinks we did something wrong. I paused, then answered, it's not that everyone thinks so, it's that the evidence proves it. She quickly said, we can fix this. Drop the lawsuit. We'll pay the money back. I laughed. Claire, do you know what your biggest problem is right now? You think that returning the money makes the harm disappear. But some things can't be bought back. She started crying. But we're family. That phrase, once their weapon to hurt me, is now just a belated excuse. No. I said softly, we share blood. But family wouldn't do this to me. After I hung up, I looked out the window and knew the real reckoning had only just begun. Because the next step wasn't to make them admit fault, it was to let everyone know exactly what they had done. The real reckoning doesn't begin when someone loses everything. It begins when they finally realize there's no one left to cover for them. 3 weeks into the investigation, I received an email from my father. Just one line. Olivia, can we meet? In the past, that would have softened me because I had waited years for them to ask, are you tired? Or say, we know how much you gave. But those words never came. And when you're truly disappointed, it's not anger, it's the absence of expectation. I still went not for reconciliation, but to give the old, patient version of myself some closure. We met at a quiet restaurant. My father looked older. He sat without his usual firmness. When he saw me, he stood. Olivia. I nodded and sat down. He was silent for a long time, then said, Ryan knows he was wrong. I looked at him and didn't answer. He continued, he's willing to pay the money back. I took a sip of water. So, my father blinked. What do you mean? So if he pays it back, does that mean nothing happened? He frowned. Do you have to be so ruthless? I laughed, not sarcastically, but at the absurdity. Dad, you know what? All of you think I'm retaliating. But no one has asked it if I hadn't found that contract. If I hadn't gotten the evidence. If he had actually taken over my company, who would have lost everything? My father lowered his head. No answer. I went on. You're not blind to what Ryan did. You just hoped the one bearing the consequences wouldn't be him but me. His eyes reddened. We're still family. I looked at him calmly. Exactly because we're family. I gave you so many chances. If you were strangers, I would have protected myself the first time you hurt me. After that, a long silence. Finally, he asked quietly, you really won't forgive him? I shook my head. No, not because I hated him, but because some bonds, once broken, cannot be pretended intact. Days later, the court confirmed that Ryan had used unauthorized documents for commercial activities. The relevant contracts were voided. At the same time, investigators confirmed evidence of forged electronic authorization and commercial fraud. His business reputation collapsed completely. Those who once called him a successful investor began to avoid him. People who had attended his wedding deleted their joint promotional posts. The thing Claire feared most came true. She lost the perfect life she had so carefully curated. A month later, she came to see me again. This time, no fine clothes, no condescending tone. She stood outside my office building, and when she saw me, her first words were, Olivia, is there really no way? I stopped and looked at her. What do you think? Her eyes were red. Ryan has already suffered so much. I asked, what exactly has he suffered? Because he can no longer use my company. Or because people finally know the truth. Claire lowered her head. We just made mistakes. I looked at her. Claire, do you know what your biggest mistake was? You weren't afraid of hurting me, you were only afraid. After being discovered. Of losing your own life. She cried. Won't you give us even one more chance? I shook my head. Chances I gave many. The first was when you exploited my trust. The second was when you publicly smeared my reputation. The third was when you tried to take my career. Now you want me to trust you again. Do you think that's possible? She was silent. After a long moment, she asked, Don't you feel sad at all? I looked at the city in the distance and said softly, Sad. I was very sad once. But now I've just accepted reality. Later. My company held its annual meeting. Investor Nathan Hayes sat in the front row. Victoria was also there. She told everyone. Olivia Carter's company has no illegal debts. All disputed funds have been recovered. The responsible parties have faced legal consequences. That day, I stood in front of the conference room and looked at everything they had once tried to take from me and felt peaceful. No triumphant joy. No vindictive pleasure. Because real victory isn't making someone beg at your feet, it's the day you no longer need their approval. 6 months later. Ryan sent me one last message. He said, Olivia. I regret it. If we could start over. I read it and didn't reply. Because some people want to start over only because they've lost the ability to hurt you anymore. And I would never go back to that past where I constantly had to prove my worth. I used to think being abandoned by family was the greatest pain. But later I found that true freedom is when, after they leave, you still have a whole life of your own. My name is Olivia Carter. I am not someone's sister. Not someone's resource. Not someone anyone can casually sacrifice. I am simply myself. And this time, no one can ever take my life away again.